America is a peace-loving nation. We do not seek conflict with Iran or any other country. I look forward to the day when sanctions can be finally lifted and Iran can become a peaceful, prosperous, and productive nation. That can go very quickly. It can be tomorrow. It can also be in years from now. So I look forward to discussing whatever I have to discuss with anybody that wants to speak. In the meantime, who knows what's going to happen? I can only tell you we cannot ever let Iran have a nuclear weapon. A lot of restraint has been shown by us, a lot of restraint, and that doesn't mean we're going to show it in the future.
President Trump today announcing more sanctions on Iran, essentially echoing what he told Chuck this weekend on Meet the Press. As my colleague Richard Engel put it, the president is offering Iran a carrot and a very big stick. Critics are calling this latest round of sanctions symbolic, but the administration hopes the move will tighten the noose around Iran's economy and force negotiations. Democratic Senator Ben Cardin is one of the most senior members in the House and the Senate, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He joins me now. Senator, thank you for taking a few minutes. Well, first of all, do you think these sanctions that were announced today are real or more symbolic?
First, it's good to be with you. The president is using sanctions as a way to isolate Iran. The challenge is he's made the circumstances between the United States and Iran very tense. There is a real risk of miscalculation that could lead to an armed conflict, which is not in the United States' national security interest. I want to make one thing clear. Iran is the bad actor. Iran's the country supporting terrorism. It's a country that has interfered in other countries. It's violated ballistic missile restrictions. So Iran needs to be dealt with. Sanctions can work, but it would be better if we were working with our allies rather than being isolated. President Trump has isolated America.
But do you think that the sanctions, do you think these sanctions today were a good idea? There was a down drone last week. Do you think this would be an appropriate action for the United States to take days after that?
I think using sanctions in regards to what happened with the drone is appropriate. But let me just caution. We want to use diplomacy to get Iran back to the negotiating table to strike an agreement. And if you're sanctioning the people you need to talk with, that's not a very good way to start diplomacy.
What impact do you think before today there have been sanctions imposed after this administration backed out of the Iran deal? The president seems to be making the case that he thinks Iran is really feeling these and that it may impact their behavior in the future. Do you think the sanctions that are in place now have been having a real impact and do have any potential to change Iran's behavior in the future?
I think it's having a real impact on Iran, on their economy. It's causing them to make different calculations. I'm concerned about what those calculations might be. But make no mistake about it, we had a regime to deal with the nuclear program. We could have imposed additional sanctions in regards to the support of terrorism, ballistic missile violations, and human rights violations. We could have had the support of our European partners in doing that. But instead, the president decided to pull out of the nuclear agreement and decided to impose sanctions without the support of our European partners, which would have been much more effective if we had their support of these sanctions.
Well, you say you're worried potentially about how Iran might react to these sanctions and to what the administration is doing. What specifically are you worried about there?
Well, they feel threatened. They may take additional military-type actions that may escalate the potential for a military conflict between the United States and Iran. Once that starts, it's hard to control what happens next. There is really not a good military option for the United States. We're much better off trying to deal with diplomacy. And in dealing with diplomacy, you isolate Iran. You don't isolate America. The sanctions help to isolate Iran. But the way the president has done that in withdrawing from the nuclear agreement, we don't have partners that are joining us in this effort.
Well, Iran, after the United States pulled out of the deal, Iran continued to say it was honoring the terms of the deal. Now it appears they are on the brink of violating it. What consequences is that going to have if Iran begins violating the terms of the deal?
Well, I expect that Iran's making these announcements in order to try to get additional concessions, economic sanctions, as relief from UK and Europe and Germany and France. They're trying to get some additional compensation for the damage caused their economy by the U.S. sanctions. So I think this is all part of their negotiations with Europe to try to get some relief. Having said that, if they start their nuclear program, we were successful under the nuclear agreement to prevent Iran from being able to have a breakout capacity for at least over 1 year. If they start increasing their nuclear capacity, that's of great concern to us. It should also be of concern to our European partners.
Had the president launched a military strike last week, it seems likely the administration would have cited the 2001 authorization, the authorization that launched the war on terror those many years ago. Is that, whether it's with Iran potentially in the future or any other actor in that region, is a new authorization needed through Congress?
Steve, absolutely. Just think back. The 2001 authorization passed by Congress was days after our attack on 9/11. It was centered on Afghanistan and the Taliban and those who harbored the terrorists that attacked our country. To say you can now use that against Iran and its activities in 2019 is just ridiculous. The president needs to come to Congress and seek an authorization for the use of military force. That's what the Constitution requires under war declarations, and the War Powers Act specifically requires. So the president needs to come to Congress. Will he? Well, we've seen over and over again the president use executive powers that many of us believe are unconstitutional.
Senator Ben Cardin, Democrat from Maryland, thank you for taking a few minutes.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.